That means you're ready.
Sent that last night, but don't get a chance to take it.
You're live.
Okay, we're gonna call to order the meeting of the Low Barrier Homeless Shelter Task Force for the state of Indiana. We will defer approval of the minutes until, later in the meeting. I think what we want to do, Jeff.
Being recorded.
Yes. I think what we would like to do, Jeff, is, go through the document, just a quick update for you guys. Jeff was kind enough to talk to me last night while I was in New York. So we spent about an hour on the phone. I gave him a lot of comments that he did an awesome job fixing them up later last night. And we got it in. Some of the things that we talked about last night as kind of tenets of this thing is, let's try to be as specific as possible with what we are trying to accomplish. Let's be as specific as possible in terms of who will ultimately be responsible to carry out the suggestions that we have. And then, once again, clarify what the actual cost is. So Jeff and I had a conversation, do we include the cost of our commission's recommendations, or we do not? I am, just from a private sector perspective, firmly believe that we need to incorporate the specific requests as part of the commission's findings on what it will take for us to, in our humble opinions, solve some of the issues or address the issues that are in front of us. So Jeff and I just talked about it. There's two perspectives. One, you keep it generalized, one, you include the specific numbers, and I think we both agreed there's definitely two ways, both have merits. The way we left it was, I did confirm with the speaker. The speaker and I had lunch. We went through a lot of different things and really talked about how do we make this actionable, I think is the key word, versus generalization comments, but specific actionable items. But he does believe that we should incorporate the number of the ask as part of the official commission study. The governor's office would like to review this next week, which I have told them that we will do before it goes final. So I think we'll have the chief of staff and his deputy would both like to see it before we go final, which we have always promised that we would do that. So that is on score for next week. They are understanding that we'll incorporate the numbers. So that is something that we'll have to do. We're not going to accomplish that at this meeting, but we should talk about it, Jeff. And maybe the best thing to do is to go through some of the changes to the document so everyone's aware of it from last night. Go ahead.
So I would rather we adopt the report today with the caveat that we're going to add those dollar amounts.
Okay.
Because I think we, under statute, have to deliver it by 12/31.
Yes, that
And
is
we're probably not going to get everybody back together
we are
before then.
we're
So I think there's probably a way to have an adoption sort of pending technical corrections and the addition of
I assume you're okay
Very
with that?
comfortable.
Okay.
those dollar amounts. I think
Okay.
that's totally fine.
Okay.
And then, let me know. I'd be glad to attend.
Yeah, I was gonna get,
governor's
yeah,
office.
I want you to attend, but you and I, after this meeting, just need to give a couple of dates.
Sure, we'll do that. And then, when Rick gets here, don't forget to take attendance. It's very important, I think, for the record.
So,
So I'd be glad to walk through the substantive changes that there were several that were offered last week that appeared in the version 2. And then the areas where Tom and I talked last night on recommendation number 4, I added a little more substance around what is supportive housing, what are supportive services. so that the layperson who may read this has some level of knowledge from that. And then, as Tom rightfully pointed out, there has to be a supply, an ongoing supply of housing. And so I added a fifth, just overarching principle about increasing the supply of permanent supportive housing. I made some technical corrections based on Kristen's feedback on recommendation 6. On recommendation 7, this came out of Tom's discussion, I think maybe with the speaker, and then our conversation yesterday about debuting this concept of master leasing as kind of a pilot project in Marion County. And then, once we demonstrate proof of concept here, it can be adapted or rolled out.
So we can measure the success.
Yeah,
So should that say in 7, state funding, 2 fund instead of 4 funding?
oh, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
I got it right there.
You guys,
You're
you're right, I appreciate that. Master leasing, and I could say, program, or we could change that to pilot project in the overview, but the idea is, as I've been talking to, local potential partners who are interested in this concept, like, well, I'll just say Partners in Housing, who owns a building. We were talking about what does the term of a master lease need to look like in order to be bankable? And a master lease for them, needs to be 5 years. And so there's probably some way to marry state funding with city funding to cover a 5-year master lease.
Yeah, to make sure that you have the appropriation for that period.
Right.
Okay.
So we can use some of the local dollars that we've set aside if there's a line in the budget that creates some funding. I think we'd probably put those two together and get a project off the ground.
So number 7 is an example where we have the action, the recommendation. IHCDA is going to be the responsible party. And then we will add what the specific dollar amount is that we believe is needed in order to be on this
Okay.
plan. So that's the theme.
So when we
that were getting to
approve
last
these, when we approve these recommendations, just know that we're gonna come back with the dollar
Yes.
amount that goes along with the recommendation. So Chris, it may be hard.
We talked about you last night about,
Yeah.
can we get, what's it take?
Even like a
And
ballpark.
also, want to read this about the state funding, gonna think of that.
And maybe this session isn't the right one.
It may
but I
not
at
be.
least wanted to lay it out there as.
We would like to understand that number in order to address the issue at hand. We don't have to do it at this
Right.
particular
I
time.
mean, because, a part of our issue too, it's all not just funding, it's just adequately finding somewhere.
Yeah, and
I mean, they don't,
Yeah. That's where the second part of that recommendation, which is not necessarily funding related, but landlord recruitment, landlord engagement. You may
Right.
be able to just take some of the lessons learned by Chip here and adapt that for your work and not.
I would almost be inclined to break that into 2 recommendations.
I thought that, I had done that originally and then I put it
And I
on.
think we would want, because I think we'd want those specific amounts to the loss mitigation fund and then define who's.
Wherever we can be,
And then who's gonna oversee the loss.
Yeah.
wherever we can be specific,
Right.
who's operating that.
I would break it. into
Where would you
Okay.
divide those, Matt? Because
I think the support the creation of loss mitigation funds and or rent guarantee programs needs to be its own
I
recommendation.
will do that.
And we should.
I guess it is, yeah.
Identify how much do we think it would take to set up that mitigation
And-
fund?
Yes.
And
That's
we've been,
relatively inexpensive.
it really
Right.
has been for us and for you, I
Yeah.
think, inexpensive.
I mean, the loss mitigation fund we've set up with FSSA is only $100,000.
I think ours is 250.
Yeah.
Like, and we've never.
We've never.
Jack, you look like you're gonna say something.
Well, we're in a 2-year budget, cycle this year, so we'll pass a budget, in the spring, starting July 1st, so, I don't know how you'd not put, an allocation in there, that'd be up to the governor, it's his proposal, so.
I mean, we can size it similar to the one we've created for Marion County.
Yeah,
Right, and then I think the question is, again, who wants to be responsible? Does DOC directly want to be responsible for having to pay landlords, handle these type stuff, or is that something you would want to partner with? Like
Right.
FSSA, when FSSA approves the clients for the program and recruits clients, but then IHCA handles the paperwork with the landlords and would pay them.
Yeah.
We hold the fund. So
Yeah.
we can talk through.
yeah, I mean, I like that idea too, because we're working so closely now. Like, I think, I looked at my calendar, we actually have a meeting with like Victoria the next week
Yeah,
to talk about the grant
the new justice
funding.
grant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I kind of,
Okay.
want to piggyback.
The appropriation is made in the budget, and the budget committee can make decisions periodically when they meet in the course of the next 2 years on when that money is released, so you don't have to have an exact plan, but you do have to have the ask, so.
Yes, okay,
All right,
okay. I think
Yeah.
we solved that
that's
one.
cool. So I'll
Yeah.
divide those up into two separate. and-
Yeah, I just don't want it to word like the DOC is saying, yeah, hey, we need all this money to forward, working collaboratively or however it is worded, I
As
guess.
much if we can be specific, so you have something measurable, something, what I want to avoid are just statements, like, we're gonna make it better. You know, and just,
I'll send another
Yeah.
version of this, even
Okay.
with these technical corrections.
Right.
And we can continue to wordsmith. a little.
yes.
Yeah, I just think it's how it's worded, like,
We have literally until 12.
We have some
31.
Okay.
We have to use it, we'll use it.
Okay.
okay.
What's the next one?
Number 10.
But the con-
Yeah.
Is actually came out of the discussion we had at the last meeting, and I tried to capture, Senator, what you suggested about identifying potential partner organizations across other counties that don't have our rights in the house. Number 11, this I think was sorely needed. So we have a list from Jennifer Layton and Lafayette, sort of a wish list of if we could have these partners at our housing navigation or engagement center, we'd be knocking it out of the park. And it's not just state agencies, it's federal and some local. And so I took her wish list and then the conversation that Tom and I had and just gave an example list of partners
That's
who
what I
are
was on,
not
yeah.
currently participating, who would be valuable.
So that is obviously part of the request of the recommendation. It's coming from the commission that these are the ones that we would like participation in some form or fashion to be
Right.
dealt with in order to allow people experiencing homelessness to be able to get a license, to get a job. I mean, I was telling Jeff, I talked with a guy the other day, it's hard for these guys to get their documents and their paper, so I do think it's very important.
The two big ones from the state that have come up time and time again are A and DWD, like Horizon House has asked for those, so.
Okay.
Right.
so-
So then, number 15, I tried to revise this based on Tim's comments and Tom's comments. So what we're trying to do here is bridge the services funding until we're able to get the Medicaid plan amendment in place and the 1915 waiver. So I try to just call that out a little more specifically.
Yes.
This wouldn't necessarily have to be permanent funding, but it's really bridge funding.
On 12, we didn't talk about this in great
Yeah.
detail, but how do we make this actionable?
So I did put in the responsible parties, Tom.
Yes.
So
Yes,
Matt doesn't think that there are a significant number of vacancies within their units across the balance of state. This is more in Indianapolis.
so where's the buck stop, I guess is what I'm trying to, how do we effectuate change on this?
So with us, with the continuum of care, it's really our executive committee of the continuum of care, which we call the Blueprint Council,
Okay,
and CHIP and the housing providers
to,
drilling down on what their vacancies
Okay.
are. So
If there could be one leader, it would be nice to,
it really is it's the continuum.
okay, all right. If there's a way to,
I'll put my name in there and I'll just.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so, sorry. So Tom, in 15, I defined the tenancy support services as you and I discussed.
yes,
And then,
yeah, that was
and then
better,
a specific call out that it's bridge funding.
yes. And then we added,
In 17.
wasn't it 16 we added?
So 16, we added just the call out that the funds would ultimately flow to Ascend Indiana via FSSA, but we may have to technically correct that at some point if FSSA says we can't do that, but
Yes.
that was a nominal ask.
So I guess for Justin and Jack, as we're talking about the future, because, you know, we tried to break this out into immediate action, future action, as it relates to the low barrier shelter project as a whole. You know, but we're identifying a number. From a guidance perspective, as it relates to the budget, what do you think is the best way to look at this in terms of a package to the state or articulate that to the state? I mean, it has to be in here because that is one of the functions of the task force, right?
Yeah.
So it has to be in there and there has to be a number. I just don't know what's the best way to tackle it from a budget. Any guidance on that?
I think I'd look at, the attached exhibit A and put all your financial information succinctly in one place.
Yes.
And, they can draw it out of that.
Okay,
The governor's office can.
Okay.
Or bill, and then it's already stated.
okay,
This is one, though, if we develop it as the Lafayette model, it's gonna be a tax credit project first. Like, that's gonna be,
But you could put that information
yeah.
in the overall financial aspect.
yeah, I mean, but we probably should. I like that, Jack, that's a good way to do it. Okay. Okay, so we talked about,
I refined number 18 so that it really refers to acquiring real estate to fulfill
yes,
action number 17.
yes,
Um,
and, the only thing I would say on 18, using local funds, can we be specific? Who is going to acquire the real estate? It's
Hard to be
been
specific.
acquired, it says that. It says acquired, hey, Rick, how are you?
Who puts back order parking over blocked areas?
Probably the city of Indiana.
Probably the-
I guess.
See, I would have.
Wait, I'm gonna blame our contractor.
I gave you an out. What you say?
So just on my theme though, of
Question.
who is responsible, like who do we go to as our recommendation?
Yeah, so this is one,
Somebody's
so
got
it's
to.
hard to say who's acquiring the real estate. So like, in the case of land adjacent to Horizon House, the city through a broker is making an offer. But with regard to another parcel that's around the corner, that is a private developer who's acquiring it sort of on behalf.
How about, could we say the city of Indianapolis will manage the process of I gotta have, somebody's gotta be in charge.
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
Support Indiana Housing Institute. The only thing on 19 from an IHCDA standpoint, I would say this one is soft. I mean, not a huge fan, as Jeff and I talked about soft statements. I mean, what's the action? What are we gonna do? What's the recommendation?
I don't,
Other than just using the word, encourage, to me, that's not much of an action or recommendation.
Yeah,
We-
I think when I saw the first draft of this, I specifically asked Jeff, I said, I don't know what this one's necessarily
Well,
saying.
originally I said incentivize, you were like, how?
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, encourage.
It's one of those things where,
Yeah,
doesn't even, and this Sport House Institute is something we've already been doing for 15 years. This is just an ongoing thing. Does it need to be listed as a? Are we trying to list everything we're doing around this issue already, or are these just new things?
Well, we're trying to find ways to increase the
Right,
amount
Is there a way
of
for-
permanent supportive housing, because it's a problem.
Can you
right. And I
attract
don't
new
think this
participants?
does, right?
How about actively development of partnerships?
I'll take anything other than just a soft statement.
I mean, Matt, how do you,
That's a good word.
how do you normally reach out or build new, or cultivate new
Yeah.
participants in that? That's what I was trying to.
Or what can the commission do to assist IHCDA in finding
Yeah,
viable developers in a very tough marketplace right now where people are having a hard time making them work because of returns, costs, it's tough. So
Yeah.
that's,
So
what do we
I
do?
don't think we have an issue finding developers, right? We have more developers wanting to do this than we have funds to award.
even through the
right?
institute?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
However,
I think because a team going through the institute has to consist of a developer, a property manager, and a service provider. Where teams sometimes have trouble finding is that service provider up front to get into the institute, right? So I think it's more, I don't think it's promoting the institute.
Yeah,
We
okay.
do that. I think it's more.
let's get
I mean,
the specific
it's-
action.
Yeah, and I don't know what the action is that we would necessarily need to ask the legislature for, but the action is, how do we better connect developers and service providers to form these teams to do this work? I mean, we were talking
Yeah,
before this meeting. about the
that's
certain project here.
specific.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking off the record before about a development you have concerns
Yep,
with, and the
yep.
issue is that there's no services connected, right? So how do you connect
Yeah,
developers and management companies who know how to do affordable housing
That's-
to
that's-
the correct services?
That sounded better.
I think I can, edit that.
Okay.
And circulate it.
All right.
Matt, is the bond volume?
Yeah, so this one needs edits.
Yeah, is that an IFA
So there's,
policy?
there's a couple things here. So first of all,
Confused on that one.
so I wouldn't call it state bond volume, it's federal funding. So I would say secure additional tax exempt bond volume for affordable housing. So the state gets a certain amount of tax exempt bonds and then they get distributed out to different agencies for different purposes, but through IFA, right? The existing policy, I believe is actually in code, but I would have to double check that, is that 48% of the tax exempt bond volume the state gets from treasury goes by statute to IHCDA. 52% of it is going for other non-housing purposes. So I believe the idea here was to say, we think the 48 should go to what? And I think you should define that one. Are you saying it should be 60%? Are you saying all 100% of the bond should go to affordable? I think there probably needs to be a.
I'm just gonna challenge, should that 48% be higher
That was my,
instead of 50?
that's my intimation, was that
Right.
we should.
That's what this is trying to
Yeah.
say, is that they're trying to shift more of it. So what I'm saying is, I think we need to define here to say, the current policy is 48, and we are asking it to be raised to what?
There you go. That's specific action. All right.
Does ICD have any gut feeling on what it could be, should be, or you just always just say, we'll take 48?
I don't offhand.
Can you and Jake talk about that?
Yeah,
I mean, because ultimately
I
what we're
think
trying to do. So,
sure. I think we have to be cautious there, right?
Yeah.
That we're not directly advocating and that we know there are other agencies who are using this money, so.
Right.
It's generally not us that's advocating to say, move it from them to us. It would be someone else doing that. I think the answer is whatever amount you gave us, we could get allocated and we can run a project,
Yeah.
right?
But it's like, what,
And for example, for the first time ever, we have shut off our multifamily bond program because we're completely out of volume. In fact, we've already eaten into next year's,
which
right?
will raise.
So that means we didn't get enough volume in 2022. We're already into 2023
Yeah.
volume. We're gonna fund less projects last year than we have in the last several years, but there's less volume.
And would a 50-50 split be meaningful, or is that?
I mean, going from 48 to 50, I'd say it's not particularly meaningful.
Yeah, okay, right.
But
Like,
yeah,
I don't know what the-
what the right number is a good
Well,
question.
okay, why don't you guys talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay,
uh, I don't think we changed anything on 21, 22, or 23. It's really 22 is directly pulled out of the Medicaid crosswalk report
Yeah.
recommendations, I think word for word. And 23 is pulled out of the Behavioral Health Commission's final report recommendations, just reiterating.
Yeah, back to 21,
Yeah.
and not trying to just put IHC's all over this, but I think you probably want, if the intention is for IHCA to run that state credit program like the new state credit program you're running, you should probably call that out.
yeah.
Just make sure it doesn't go somewhere else.
Well, that was right, yeah, I was doing something.
Yes.
Because we want-
It's gotta
we
be
would want-
specific.
Yeah.
Align it with bonds
Yeah.
and federal credits
Yeah.
and other things on both.
That was certainly the intent.
You're absolutely right.
All right.
So back on 20, if you put a specific goal in there, if you put a specific goal in there to, with a statement to, make efforts to, or to establish a new,
Allocation.
percentage or allocation of
That's good.
this.
That's good.
I mean,
It's
and
got
we're
it.
saying it as opposed to the agency.
Right, right. That was,
Yes.
the point was to keep them out of the
Yeah,
and have,
yeah.
have us make that
Yeah.
recommendation.
Right, this task
Yeah,
force
that's right.
is saying we could, IHCA should get more than 48%,
Right.
because basically what we're saying is we believe the best and highest use of these limited tax exempt bonds, the creation of housing.
But to be fair, you're not saying this, it's the commission.
That's kind of where I was getting at. with-
No,
I'm saying increasing the allocation
Yes.
gives us the opportunity to make some significant difference.
Yes.
Correct.
Which is the end
Correct.
of it all here.
Right.
Correct.
Your question was, have Jake and I ever had this conversation, we're coming up with a number, and my answer was no, because we
I
don't
understand
know that type.
Right.
Right.
But this group could
But
absolutely.
if you could suggest that, you know what, if it was just split,
Right.
where it was 52 to ICDA, that would be meaningful, or if it really needs to be 60, right, like that, right, would be helpful.
I like Jack's suggestion.
Yeah.
It gives us, you know, as we start to measure each of these points, it gives us an action to say, all right, where are we? What, okay.
Right.
Okay.
So Tom, I'll work over the weekend on
We need to start our addendum.
these,
Like
yeah,
Jack was saying on the costs, or the recommendation cost to the budget.
yes.
And I would like to have that. I would like to have that draft vetted before we go see Earl and John and those guys. I think the speaker's fine. I think he's been briefed enough. We don't need to do that again, but these guys definitely, as you know, they want to
Yeah, so those cost estimations come,
spend more time with the speaker than I have done.
those cost estimations come from the downtown Indy IFF CSH study, so we've got that.
Yeah,
We got
we got
that
that
spelled
covered.
out,
Yeah,
so we could bring that with us and say, here's
Yes.
where these come from.
right.
But I don't know that we would recommend a direct state allocation of all those funds, like, yeah, no, that, I think the financing is really just it's a tax credit financing with other sources.
Yeah, we just want to, but Jack's right, it should be in that addendum explaining the,
Gives them an opportunity to either increase or decrease areas that they know that they'll have difficulty.
right.
selling.
It gives them a little
Right.
latitude,
Yeah.
maybe is the way to say
We'll
it.
show them a list of options.
Yeah, does that sound good? Okay.
But it's not really, I wouldn't call it an addendum necessarily because the report's already on the website, so we're just referring
Yeah,
to it.
however, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying, pull it all
Yeah,
together.
I don't know if we want to put it after each one or have a separate, I don't know.
I-
It doesn't matter to me, but
I think some of those, so some of these asks that we're talking about, you know, I had a version of this where they were in it. And we put it back in.
yeah. So, yeah, we definitely want to do that. So, Mr. Secretary, then I would believe that what we would want to do is want to give a motion, to approve, the current draft and the intent, understanding that this document will continue to change over the balance of the year, prior to its submittal, understanding that there will be various, wordsmithing as it relates to making it as specific and actionable as possible. And then number two, including a specific request from a dollar perspective to the state of Indiana. So we can talk about that, but that would be the motion that we would hope to hear, and then approve this document to give the team the balance of the year to complete the document without coming back to the commission.
With technical corrections.
Technical corrections, right? Yeah. I think that's
Yes.
really all we're doing.
Yes, technically.
And attaching those.
You're good, technically.
And basically voting on the concept of it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it's guiding principles and the overarching.
yes, yes. Could we ask for a motion in that reading?
Perhaps a roll call and some other stuff first.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Why don't we, now that we have the proper quorum, why don't we do a roll call? We'll start with everyone present in the room, state their name, and then we will go to anyone that is online after that. I will start, Tom McGowan, present, in the state office complex.
Jeff Bennett present in person.
Right.
Senator Jack Sanborn, President.
Rick Alves, present.
Matt Rayburn with IHCDA, present.
Karen Holly, Marion County Public Health Department in person.
Chris Blessinger, Department of Correction, present.
Thank you. Then if we could also have a roll call of anyone that has joined us, remotely, please.
Microphone's on.
Justin Moed, virtual.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary? Okay. Having completed the roll call at this point, we would like to request a motion in regards to the commission's discussions about approving, our draft document to allow us to proceed forward with the final submission, subject to the language that Mr. Secretary, I think, will clarify.
So moved. I think we're saying pending technical corrections.
Yes.
Second.
Second. Okay, all in favor, aye. We will have to technically do the roll call, I believe, again, of all those present at the state office complex. Then we'll move to remote. Tom McGowan, present, aye.
Jeff Bennett present, aye.
Jack Sanborn, President. Aye.
Rick Alves, present.
Matt Rayburn, present. Aye.
Karen Holly, present, aye.
Chris Blessinger, present, aye.
Could we, Justin, if you could please, state your position from a remote perspective, please?
Present. Aye.
Motion carries. The next order of business would be to have the commission approve our September, October, and November meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion? I hear a motion. We will start the roll call on those present. Tom McGowan, present. Aye.
Jeff Bennett present, aye.
Jack Sanborn, President. Aye.
Rick Alves, present.
Matt Rayburn, present. Aye.
Karen Holly, present, aye.
Chris Blessinger, present, aye.
If we could get the remote position on the motion, please.
Justin Moed, present. Aye.
Motion carries. So thank you for everybody on those two orders of business. Is there any other business before we conclude the commission meeting today?
Covered a lot of ground since February.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who committed time and brain power to this. I think the recommendations are actionable and,
Yeah.
and it's not.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. We will, adjourn. Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
I'm glad you did.
And good thing you did.
Driving around, starting to panic, right? Yeah, down a parking garage.